Welcome to English 1120, our Introduction to Grammar course. In this video, our focus is on giving an overview of some basic sentence types. We're going to cover a wide variety of different sentences, but they're going to fall into three main categories according to the types of verbs that we want to cover. So we'll talk about intransitive verbs, linking verbs, and transitive verbs. Just as a reminder, in previous videos, we talked about sentence diagramming. The two main tools that we'll often see linguists use for analyzing sentences visually are tree diagrams and Reed-Kellogg diagrams. Both of them help us better understand sentences by helping us see both the subject and the predicate components in a sentence. And in this video, we're just going to focus on the Reed-Kellogg diagrams. So let's talk about intransitive verbs. So intransitive verbs are verbs that don't require an object or a complement. We can think of them as standalone verbs. Maybe it might help you with the in intransitive. You can think about the in introverted and think about these are verbs that don't want to be with anyone else. They're comfortable being alone. Okay? So examples could be play, sing, laugh, and sleep. A subject could do these verbs without anything else in the sentence. So let's look at an example. My friend sings. Okay. So we have our subject, my friend, and then we have our predicate, which just consists of the verb sings, and this can function completely on its own. We don't need anything else in that predicate. It can just be the main verb. Okay, now we could add an adverbial phrase here. Okay, my friend sings elegantly, but we don't need anything else. That elegantly is optional. Here's another one. Some children are swimming. Take a moment and identify the subject and the predicate and think about, or if you like, pause the video and sketch quickly the diagram that you think this can be represented for this sentence. So some children are swimming. We've got a more complex main verb phrase. We have it in the present continuous form, but we can just put it in that main verb position. Here's another one. My friend sings in the shower. Now we've gone back to our one about the friend, but we're adding a different kind of adverbial phrase. This is telling us where the friend is singing, okay? And so this adverbial phrase about when is actually using a prepositional phrase to get at it. So in, and we put in on a slant, okay? Prepositions will go on a slant coming off of the part of the main sentence that they're describing. Okay, and the in the shower is describing where the singing happens. Okay, so in, and then off from that diagonal, we'll put another horizontal line where we'll put our noun here, which is shower. Okay, now shower has a modifier, it's determiner the, and we put that on a slanted line off from shower. So my friend sings in the shower. But remember, in the shower is optional for this sentence. It could be a grammatical sentence without that phrase. Here's another one. Try to do this one on your own. If you want, pause the video, sketch it out, and then compare your answer with the one that I show. The PE teacher ran across the back field. What is the verb and what is the non-essential information? Okay, is there an adverbial phrase here, prepositional phrase that functions adverbially? So we have the PE teacher. That's our subject. Then our main verb phrase is just ran. Okay, the simple past tense. Then we have across the back field. That's this prepositional phrase that's describing where or how the running is happening. Okay, and so we put our preposition across, coming down from ran. Okay, across what? The back field. So field is our main noun there, and the back are descriptors for that field, and so they go on the slants. We could have something else different. Here's another one that's more about the time, okay, instead of the place. The PE teacher ate after the team practice. But a similar kind of thing is going to happen here, where we have after telling when the eating happened. So after the team practice. So when we're working with intransitive verbs, if we want to identify, is this an intransitive verb sentence, separate the predicate into phrases. Okay? If all the phrases except for the main verb phrase are optional, then this is an intransitive verb. It doesn't need these other components. If you could also think if this phrase can be replaced by a prototypical adverb, then the phrase is functioning adverbially. So we go back to the one, the PE teacher ran across the field. Okay, we could replace that with the PE teacher ran quickly, or the PE teacher ran there. The PE teacher ate after the team practice. The PE teacher ate later. Okay, so if we could replace those phrases, then that helps us know that they're functioning adverbially that way. Let's now talk about linking verbs. Okay, linking verbs connect or link the subject with a complement that helps describe it or define it. Sometimes we call linking verbs copular verbs or stative verbs. Sometimes different grammar books will use those terms. Here's some examples: verbs like be, seem, become, feel. Okay. Now, some of these words, like feel, could also function as a different kind of verb, not as a linking verb. But when it functions as feel, what it is this feels nice, right? Or it feels cold outside. Whereas that cold or that nice is describing the subject, not like I can feel the bumpy surface of the book. Okay, that's a different kind of verb meaning. Even though it's that word feel, it's a different meaning and different grammatical function. So let's talk about some of these linking verbs with time and place complements there. So he is in the kitchen. And we know that be can function as a linking verb. Okay? If we just had the sentence he is, that's a little more metaphysical, right? He is, like he exists. Generally, we use he is to describe who he is or what he is, or when he is, or in this case, where he is. So he is in the kitchen. And we see again that prepositional phrase coming off of the verb. Okay. Another one here, the party will be at noon today. So the party is our subject. Okay, will be, this is just another form of be. Okay, it's the simple future. And when will it be? Well, we actually have two phrases that tell when it will be. Today, so that functions sort of adverbially, but also at noon. Okay, so we have our preposition coming off and then the time or the noun there, noon. Here's one where we're using a verb that can be a linking verb. It can also be a different kind of verb. Here it's a linking verb. The blue car smells very old. Now, we're not saying that the blue car has the ability to smell, right? We're saying that this is defining the blue car. This is describing the blue car. It smells very old. So the blue car, and then we have smells. But now we've got something, you're noticing that we're seeing this slanted line that comes after the main verb phrase. And essentially, this is now defining our subject. Okay, the blue car smells old, or very old in this case. Okay, and so that definition for the blue car, or that descriptor for it, is put on the slanted line to tell us that it's not the blue car is smelling, it's got a nose and it's smelling something. Instead, we're saying that that oldness is defining the blue car, and that's what the slanted line helps indicate. Let's look at another example. Okay, his sister is an astronaut. So his sister is our subject. We've got a linking verb, is. Okay, it's the prototypical linking verb, is or be. Okay, and then what? What is she? She is an astronaut. Okay, and because an astronaut is defining or describing our subject here, we put it on that slant astronaut, and then we have an as our determiner coming off of it. So we would call that a noun. These are noun complements, where they're complementing, defining, or describing the noun. So when we're looking for a linking verb, one thing to keep in mind is the main verb be or some other kind of linking verb. Then some other questions to ask yourself. Is the main verb phrase followed by an adverbial phrase of time or place, like she is in her office? Or is the main verb phrase followed by an adjectival subject complement? For example, he is very kind. Okay, kind is describing him. It's an adjective. Or instead, is that complement a nominal or a noun phrase? He is a police officer. Okay, police officer is him. That's a descriptor. Okay, so in both that adjectival or nominal subject complement, that's when we see that slanted line that comes after the linking verb with the adjective or the noun phrase that is describing the subject. Let's talk about our last group. These are the transitive verbs. A transitive verb is a verb that can take an object. Okay, in other words, the object is the receiver of the action that the subject's doing. So some examples are buy, wear, bake, see. Okay. Some of these verbs can function as intransitive verbs. They can function on their own. They don't need an object, but they can also function with an object, and so they can function as a transitive verb. In fact, you'll often see this in dictionaries where you look up a verb and it will just say whether it's a transitive verb, an intransitive verb, or it'll be both. So let's talk about transitive verbs with a direct object. A simple, basic kind of transitive verb sentence. 4 students are purchasing textbooks. Our subject is the 4 students. Okay. Our main verb phrase, are purchasing. We've got the simple or the present progressive here. And then our object, the thing that is being purchased, okay, is the textbooks. And so we represent this in the diagram with the line that comes down after the main verb phrase. It is vertical, so it's not on a diagonal. It's vertical, but it doesn't bisect the line. It just meets up to the line and it stops. And that's an easy way for us to identify the object of the sentence. Okay, so 4 students are purchasing textbooks. Now it's your opportunity to try. Here's the sentence that has a direct object. If you like, you can pause the video, diagram your sentence, and then compare it with my drawing. The gray kitten ate the cat food. What's the subject? What's the main verb phrase? What's the direct object? The gray kitten is our subject. Ate is the main verb phrase. And then the cat food is our direct object. The kitten ate the cat food. Okay? Or the cat food is eaten by the kitten. So then we know that that is the object. Okay, let's talk about transitive verbs with a direct object and IO or an indirect object as well. Okay, so this is where we've got one object, but it's to another object as well. All right, so here's an example. Mark wrote Nick a letter. Take a moment and think about this one. What is the direct object? What is it that Mark is writing? Is Mark writing Nick or is Mark writing a letter? Okay. Another way to rearrange the grammar of this sentence is that Mark wrote a letter. Okay, that's the direct object, the letter. That's what he's writing. But he's writing the letter to Nick. Now, English has this ability to take the indirect object sometimes and put it ahead of the direct object, and we drop the to part. So you might need to rewrite the sentence to help clarify in your mind what is the direct object, the thing that is receiving the action, okay? And then what is that going to, or who is it intended for? And that would be the indirect object. So let's go ahead and diagram this, okay? Mark wrote a letter, okay? But then we've got who or for or why the letter, it's to Nick. So we if to is part of the sentence, you can put it on the slant there and write it in, okay? And then Nick is our noun. We'll put it on a parallel line to the main sentence. If it's just Mark wrote Nick a letter, you could put the to in parentheses, or you could just drop it off and it's implied that there's a to there. Let's try another one here, okay? Think about it the same way. What is the subject, the main verb phrase, the direct object, and the indirect object? The leader is sending her team an email. What is the leader sending? So another way to think about this is the leader is sending an email to her team. So we've got the leader as our subject, is sending is our main verb phrase. Our direct object is an email. But then indirectly, this is being sent to her team, okay? Is sending to her team, okay? Now we've got this You know, I've got the wrong label on there. It should say a transitive verb with an object complement. This is a trickier phrase. We don't see this as much in English, but let's talk about it because it will help us better understand what's happening here when we see these kinds of sentences. We elected Pat president. We elected Pat president of our school club. Okay. The subject is we, the main verb phrase, elected. And then we've got these two words, Pat and president. Okay. Here's how we want to represent this. This is an object complement. So at the basic sense, we've got a sentence, we elected Pat. And we agreed that we could do that as a simple sentence. It would just be a basic transitive verb with a direct object. We elected Pat. But president is also a way to describe Pat. That's what's happened to Pat. Okay, we elected Pat president. Pat is the president. We elected the president. It's Pat. So we can represent that by the slanted line to show that Pat is the president, or the president is Pat here. And that's what that slanted, that diagonal line is showing. It's our object complement. We've talked before about a subject complement, okay, where after that linking verb, we could have an adjective or we could have a noun phrase that describes or defines the subject. But here we've got something that is an object complement. It's describing or defining the object. And so in a similar way, we'll use that slanted line. And now we know that president is a definition or description of Pat. Here's a similar sentence. They considered her a saint. What's the subject? What's the main verb phrase? What's the object? And then what is the object complement? Okay, so they considered her, and then her is, or is defined by, or is described as a saint. So they considered her saint, a saint. All right, so we've looked at some simple to very more complex transitive verbs. We could ask ourselves, when we look at a sentence like this, what is the object that is receiving the action? Okay, so you could say, what is being verbed, or who is being verbed? So if we look at Tim carries the baby, we ask ourselves, well, what is Tim carrying? Tim carries what, or who? Tim carries who? The red tractor pulls what, or the red tractor pulls who? Okay, the answer to those questions is the direct object. Sometimes it gets more complicated when we've got an indirect object. Okay, so we can ask ourselves, can the indirect object be replaced by a to phrase? Okay, it's to someone. So we offered the officer a cup of water. Okay, we can think what part of that could be replaced with the to phrase. We offered the officer to a cup of water. We can't do that, but we could say we offered a cup of water to the officer. Then we know that a cup of water is the direct object. The officer is the indirect object. And if we're dealing with an object complement, ask ourselves, is there an object complement here? Let's look at an example. They left the room completely clean. Okay, now this left isn't like they departed. It means what condition, okay, did they give to this room? So they left the room completely clean. Completely clean is a object complement. It's functioning here as an adjective phrase, right? Completely clean. And so we're saying that the room now is completely clean. So these are some different ways that we've looked at transitive verbs. We will get lots of practice to go back over these. You're welcome to watch the video again if you like, and we'll have practice in class as well. But what we covered were the intransitive verbs that don't require an object. They can function on their own. We talked about the linking verbs, okay, like be, that define or describe the subject. And then we talked about transitive verbs that can take an object. Sometimes these also have indirect objects as well, or an object complement.